Let's get down to it. I am Michael T. Smith. This is the Church of, and here is your message for the week of July 20 in the year 2025. We are talking about the elements of a supernatural life, living in the Spirit, arising out of our series that we've been in since the beginning of the year. What about your funeral? And when the day that your life expires, you want to leave behind a supernatural legacy, which demands and requires living a supernatural life, which of course makes walking in the Spirit essential. And we've been laying out that, and I've been trying to give articulation to things that are known, right? The old church used to say certain things are caught, they can't be taught. So I'm trying to teach things that you would otherwise have to caught them, right? Have to have received them in your spirit. And I'm attempting to do that. And the feedback, so many of you writing in week out, sharing the power and impact of it. Even some of you have never heard this stuff. You're like, what is this? It's the most practical way to live as a spiritual person that I've ever heard. That's what I'm trying to do, is to break it down to break it down to the lowest common denominator. And others of you who have heard it and say, well, I've heard this before, but never in the non-weaponized view. So whether you're new to it or whether it's old hat, just lock in here, as the kids say, and let's see what good may come. I want to reference a couple of scriptures today. 1 Timothy 6:10 I'd like to reference, and for the love of money is the root of all evil. Such a bold idea. Which while some have coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But you, O man of God, writing to this young minister, instead of getting in a wrong relationship with material things, I want your life to be about following after righteousness, or the charity is what the Hebrew idea is, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. So this is kind of two different pursuits, this obsession and fixation on the material, or the obsession and fixation on the development of the spiritual life. And we'll get to some more scriptures later, but let's get into our notes. So much now, and we're just going to go for this. We're talking about elements of the supernatural life, and I think this is School of the Spirit, Part 8. But here it is. I think we got all the tech behind us. I'm just going to check one more time. Are we good? Elements of this supernatural life. So much of Jesus' true teaching, I have this in my notes now, so much of Jesus' true teaching centered around setting our relationship to material resources aright. So much of Jesus' true teaching centered around setting our relationship to material resources aright. I would say putting the turtle, taking it off its back and putting it on its feet again. And if you read the Gospels in a non-weaponized manner, it becomes evident that so much of his teaching, you've heard it many times, Jesus talked about money more than he talked about heaven. And there's some context in which you can hear that, and it can be kind of destructive or contra Christ, or certainly Christ amiss. But there's also ways you can hear that truth, that Jesus talked about money more than he talked about heaven. You can hear that, and it can actually put you on a path of true spiritual religion. So much of Jesus' teaching centered around setting our relationship to material resources aright. I want to set this relationship aright. I think of a plumb line. You think of the chalk line, right? You draw it out and you snap that plumb line, and it snaps in place. And so much of what was being taught by Jesus was to true up and to correct, to aright yours and my, or whoever would hear, relationship to material resources. Now, Pastor Mike, when you say Jesus' true teaching, what do you mean by that? Well, I am of a firm persuasion that you can't have it both ways. Maybe we'll go to the whiteboard here for a second, but on your screens here, you can't have it both ways. I feel like Jesus of Nazareth, right? And we'll just call him Jon, right? Jon can be a fabrication, right? He can be a complete fabrication, ahistorical, never really existed fairy tale, an amalgamation of different mystics throughout time, kind of the best of, formed into one. He could be that. He could be a prophet, right? He could be a seer. He could be a mystic. I could say he could be an, and I'll just put lowercase, an incarnation, right? He could be all of those things. He could be I can't even read that. As a prophet, a seer, a mystic, an incarnation. Jesus of Nazareth can be all of those things. Or, right, or he could be God in human form. Or God clothed, clothed in humanity. When I speak of Jesus' true teaching, I'm saying you can't have it both ways. That Jesus can be a fabrication, that people just made him up. He never even existed historically. He was never any of the things. Or he could be the incarnation of God, love, the love at the core and crust of the cosmos, the causeless cause, the sans cosmic source of all things, God in human form. Or he could be a made-up fabrication. He could be a prophet. He could be a seer. He could be a mystic. He could be an incarnation, one of many incarnations. Somebody say, what do you mean by this? If he is anything in column A, right, if he's anything over here in this side, if he's anything in column A, then you can look at the red letters in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you can accept that those red letters were said by Jesus. If he's just a fabrication, then you can put those red letters in the mouth of any fabrication. If he was a prophet, if he was a seer, if he was a mystic, if he was an incarnation of God, a special born embodiment of God, then he could have certainly said all of the red letters in the Scriptures. But if you decide that he is in fact God, right, in human form, God clothed in humanity, the incarnation, then you have to know that there are things in the red letters attributed to him that there's no way God could say. Because you know intuitively, you know experientially, you know what you know about being a human. You know what you know about empathy. You know what you know about your own capacity to walk in goodness. And you know that if you have a basic capacity to walk in dignity, humanity, empathy, sight of others, sight of self in others, even sight of the divine God in others, Matthew 25, when you were helping them, you were helping me. You know your capacity to do that. So when you read a scripture that Jesus of Nazareth said to the woman that was healed, you've been healed, go and sin no more, lest more bad sickness come upon you. You know a prophet could say that. You know a seer could say that. You know a mystic could say that. You know someone who's an incarnation of God could say that. You know that God could never say that. You know that God could never, would never, has never said to anyone sick, this came on you because of the bad stuff you did. Stop doing bad stuff, lest worse things come upon you. Well, no, that's not true. My cousin, he smoked and he drank and he did cocaine and boy, he kept on sinning and he had a heart attack and he died. And so don't tell me our sin doesn't cause. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. Well, I know so-and-so was sleeping around and I kept telling him, stop sinning, some bad thing's going to come upon you. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We know that what goes up must come down. And sometimes there are actions we put out into the universe that when they come back to us, they come back in destructive ways. But that's not the same thing as if you violate a vertical command, this bad thing is going to happen to you. Why? Because what else do we know to be true about Christ? That everyone was at all times trying to find out in his world who violated the vertical command to cause this sickness. And was it them that did it? Was their parents that did it? Who's bringing this bad thing into the world? And Jesus refused to ascribe to that idea. He refused to subscribe to that idea. He refused to yield to the idea that every time you see somebody going through some bad thing, they must have done something to bring that bad thing on them. He knew how to see suffering to enter suffering. He knew the cause of this individual suffering and collective suffering was not individual or collective disobedience. He knew there was a great suffering that all were partakers of, and God partook of that universal human suffering. And even though you and I don't walk away knowing the answer as to why they're suffering, we certainly have no question on what God's approach and response to suffering is, which is to do everything in every power that we have to bring healing to that suffering. So if you want to talk about Jesus' true teaching, you can make him a prophet, you can make him a seer, you can make him a mystic, you can make him an incarnation, and you can say, I guess he said every red thing here, because a prophet doesn't have to be perfect. A seer doesn't have to be perfect. A mystic doesn't have to be perfect. They all have partial knowledge. But if we insist that Jesus is, in fact, God taking on human form, love taking on human form, then we must relinquish the idea that every single thing attributed to him in red actually came from him. You got to pick one way or the other. So I say again in your notes, so much of Jesus' true teaching If he's a mystic, then you take what he takes and you chew the meat and you spit out the bones. But if he's God, then you got to find out what was truly in those red letters that could be reconciled with God. And that true teaching is centered around setting our relationship to material resources aright. In your notes now, the aim of Jesus' teaching in the area of material resources is twofold. Number one, it starts with this: the now life. Jesus taught on material resources as it relates to our now life, right here, right now, right here, right now. Somebody put that on a loop. The recognition and realization of the life-sapping and dehumanizing dangers of improper material relationship. What did Jesus teach concerning money? He taught on, in your notes, the recognition. He provoked the recognition. He provoked the realization of the life-sapping, how a wrong relationship with material things will sap the life out of you, the dehumanizing dangers of improper material relationship. Jesus, when he taught on money, his true teaching, when he taught on material world, talked about that if we have an improper relationship with it, it has the power to sap the life out of us. It has the power to bring dehumanizing dangers when we don't know how to relate to materials properly. The love of money, the wrong relationship with that which is material, is at its root. And what we're talking about is walking in the Spirit. Somebody walking in the Spirit is setting themselves to walk on the higher plane, but the pull of those material resources, the lies and deceit of those material resources can, if we don't know how to manage that, our relationship to it properly, sap the life out of us and lead to dehumanizing dangers coming out of an improper relationship. The recognition and realization of the life-sapping, dehumanizing dangers of a wrong relationship with material things. That in pursuit of material things, it can pull us out of even our expression of true religion. In the wrong relationship in the right now with material things, it can actually take the living right out of life. And so Jesus taught constantly. And you think of the teachings about daily bread. You think of the teachings of take no thought. You take of the teachings on why are you trying to obsess about what you're going to have now? That God takes care of this and he'll take care of you. Trying to seed us so that we don't get in the life-sapping dangers of it, but also he taught on be careful in the pursuit of it, because sometimes while you're pursuing it, you're taking the dignity of away from other people in your pursuit of it. So Jesus taught about the now life. In your notes, Jesus taught, still under the now life, the self and others risk. In your notes, it should be coming flowing in the chat. They're trying to get it to you as quick as they can. The self and others risk. There's a self risk and an others risk. The self and others risk arising from our inordinate fixation on the material resources. The self and others risk arising from our inordinate fixation on the material resources. What did Jesus teach about money? What did he teach truly about money? His true teaching? He taught about the now life. He taught about recognizing. He taught about realizing the life-sapping, dehumanizing danger of improper material relationship, that self and others risk. There's a risk to it. It's a self-risk. It's an others risk. That self and others risk that arises from our inordinate fixation on the material resources. Now, what material resources? In your notes, the self and others risk arising from the material resources that we do have and we don't have. that there's a risk to self when you have an inordinate fixations on the money and resources that you have. You pay too much attention and get fixated on the money you have, you'll put yourself well-being and the well-being of others at risk. Or if you fixate too much on the material resources you don't have, you'll put yourself and others at risk. What do you mean others at risk? Well, you could actually hurt yourself going too much about money. You could hurt other people focusing too much on money, but it's really of the true self, of the essence of self, that you can actually transgress against yourself. You can actually diminish your full expression of your humanity, your full experience, your full enjoyment of the human experience. Focusing too much on the money you got can take that life out of you, and focusing too much on the money or resources you don't have can take life at you. And not only that, but others suffer when you are too obsessed and fixated on what you have. Others suffer when you are too fixed and obsessing over what you don't have. This wrong relationship with materials, the self-risk and others risk that arises from an inordinate fixation on the material resources. Which kind? The ones we have when we don't. And sometimes we have tons of resources. And when the cotton is high and, oh, look how well we're doing, it's going to be a great Christmas this year, you can get a wrong fixation on that and end up injuring yourself. You end up transgressing against your own well-being and soul. You can end up so fixated on how much stuff you have that you end up overlooking others. There's a self-risk and an others risk. And at the same time, well, you could have a terrible, 4 hungry children, no crop in the field, find time to leave me loose wheel, right? You could be, and you could get so fixated on your lack and so fixated on what's going on and so fixated on how far behind you are that you end up transgressing against the very essence of your soul. You end up transgressing against the very essence of the dignity of others. I hope you're catching what I'm trying to bring to you today. Not only did Jesus teach in his true teachings on our relationship, so I thought we were talking about walking in the Spirit. I'm trying to give you the greatest lesson I could ever give you to living a spiritual life is coming forth here. These teachings, week after week, and they all go together. So, well, you just kind of talk for a little bit. I don't know what you're saying. Just sit here and allow the illumination of the Spirit to put the pieces together for you. I feel sometimes Jesus would teach out there 2 or 3 days, and somebody would travel in town to hear him, and they'd come home, and some people came home and said, my God, he just opened up everything. I've never heard any teaching like this in my life. Other people came home, and they said, well, what did he talk about? I don't know, farming, and I guess he mentioned some dude traveling. I didn't really get anything out of it because you got to just sit. And if you're not doing this, maybe you're new to spiritual things. I don't know. Let me help you out. Never go to a teaching without asking God, help my ears hear, my eyes see, and my heart understand. Why? Because I pray every time I stand before anyone. Lord, I thank you that their ears hear and their eyes see, their heart. Come into agreement of expectation. God, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to take this notes. I'm going to let it wash over me because why? You may not get it on the first pass or the first thought, but when it occurs to you and in illumination, right? So just hear what I'm saying. Jesus taught about a right relationship, setting our relationship to material things aright, and he taught that in the now life, you can dehumanize yourself, you can sap the life out of yourself, paying too much attention to the resources you have or the resources you don't have. And I'm not going to do your Bible study for you. Just think of all the parables, all the teachings, all the lessons, the fowls of the air, the fish of the sea. I mean, talk about all of those things that he talked about to try to get people to understand you're paying too much attention. And people that had a bunch of money, he said, watch out now. You're paying too much attention to that and neglecting your own soul. People that were struggling with money, he says, you're paying too much attention to that and missing out on God's miracle provision of your life. He was trying to set the turtle aright. But his teachings also were on the now life, but number 2, they were on the next life. The impact of this financial material setting aright on our next life. Take your notes, grasp this, sit with this. Jesus taught, in your notes, how our keen sensitivity in this regard. Or I'll say it, our keen sensitivity regarding our relationship to material things. That when we develop a keen sensitivity, Jesus taught how our keen sensitivity in this regard is more central to the state of our spiritual life than any other metric. Our sensitivity, keen, sharp, attentive, attuned, our keen sensitivity in our relationship to material things is more central to the state of our spiritual life than any other metric. How you relate to money, how you relate to finances, how you relate to material things when it comes to your next life. We're talking about the now life, the earth life, and he taught about how it affects your earth life. He's talking about how it affects also your non-earth life, not your now life, but your next life. That Jesus, the sum of his teaching, the true teachings, not the weaponized, false, co-opted. Jesus literally of Nazareth pours out his life in repudiation and in denunciation of political and religious power structures that stand in the way of true religion. Gave his life stamped out, squashed out like a grape, blood spilled for out of a power grab of those religious and political structures, and then for him to be stolen and made a puppet of those same religious and political structures. I mean, it's a coup d'etat. It's the ultimate taking truth and putting it in a false context, so much so that now if you come and suggest true religion is actually learning how to relate to the material realm and how it shapes your inner and outer life and your relationship with people, you say that, they call you the tares. Jesus put out the wheat that said that the way you relate to your life, your own life and others' life in this material world is central to your now life, and the way you relate to your material things in this life is central to who you are as a spiritual person that affects your next life. That is actually the wheat, but we've been told that the wheat is you better confess the right God at the right time and do the right thing so you go to the right place when you die. That's straight from the pit of hell. That privatized, you better get Jesus or you're going to hell. You better not believe in Muhammad. You better not believe in Buddha or you're going to hell. If you don't, who's going to pay the price for your sins and all that? I mean, all those false things that were literally the reason he was killed, for suggesting that all of that is a false context. And then someone came along and took the very things the man was murdered over and made those things the central doctrine. That's not the wheat, that's the tares. The wheat is Jesus teaching how our now life and our next life is directly affected by our relationship to material things. If you want to know where you are spiritually, check your relationship to material things. Check your relationship to the material world. Well, they told us that there's no political solution. We're spirits in the material world. And if you want to know anything about true religion, you're going to have to cross this finance money part of you so that your fixation on it doesn't sap the life out of you, doesn't dehumanize other people, that when you have it, it doesn't distract you. When you don't have it, it doesn't distract you. And if you want to know where your true spiritual state is, where do you really stand in spiritual things? It's directly rooted to your keen sensitivity to proper relationship with material things. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Is it? Okay, my God, forgive me for cursing. Jesus taught, relating to the next life in your notes, how both its absence and its presence. What I mean, materials, money, material resources, comforts, luxuries, means of exchange, the power of buying and selling, the power of securing, how the absence of materials and the presence of materials. The presence and absence can engender spiritual blindness. Jesus taught this. What I mean, he says you get too obsessed over the absence of material resources in your life, you're going to be blind to the higher things. You get too obsessed over the abundance of material resources in your life, you're going to be blind to spiritual things. I'll read it again in your notes. How both its absence and presence, its dearth. What I mean by dearth, is that the guy from Star Wars? No, it's dearth. It's desert. You look in miles in every direction, you don't see any materials. It's absence and its presence. You put too much emphasis on its absence, you'll be spiritually blind. Too much emphasis on its presence, you'll be spiritually blind. Too much emphasis on its dearth, the desert of material resource that you feel you're in, you'll be spiritually blind. You put too much emphasis on its superfluity, that it's just everywhere, we have overabundance, it can engender spiritual blindness. This is the core of Jesus' true teaching. Well, I came here to learn how to be a spiritual person. I'm trying to teach you. I have eased up the mountain to get you to this place. All the things I talked about the spirit and the wisdom and all of that is flowing now into this thing, that a wrong relationship with materials with the material realm is when the turtle's upside down, there's a perversion in your spirituality. There's a corruption in your spirituality that is working like it's a perverse yeast. It's a perverse leaven that's working through your spiritual life and skewing. And how many times in scriptures do we see Jesus teaching in his true teaching over and over? A rich man ate good every day. A poor man just would like to be, can I have your leftovers in your refrigerator? You bought something, you Googled, how long can I eat a steak and a baked potato after it was ordered? And they say 5 days. You say, well, it's been 7 days. Let me throw that out. How long can I enjoy these ribs? Let me throw that out. And it says the poor man was outside the gate and said, boy, I sure would have liked some of that food you were going to throw away. If you weren't going to eat it, I sure could have used it. And Jesus said, then they both died. died. And the rich man opened his eyes in hell, and the poor man opened his eyes in heaven. Why was he teaching something like this? Why was he teaching heaven and hell based on the material thing? He was trying to set the turtle aright. Why is the teaching say that he goes to Zacchaeus, this rich guy, and the rich guy is sitting there breaking bread with Jesus, and he says, he says on second thought, he said, I made a lot of money being a swindler. I'm going to give that back fourfold. And I've been looking at my account. I think 50 cents on the dollar I'm going to give to poor people. And what does Jesus say? Wow, salvation came to your house. But there's no Romans 10, 9, and 10. There's no confession. How did salvation come to a man's house? Because he said his relationship with materials are right. Consider the rich young ruler. Master, what must I do that I might inherit eternal life? He says, well, what do you read in the book? He said, well, in the book I read that we should love God and love other people. He said, well, you did pretty good. All those have I kept from my youth up. He says, well, seems to me that if you really want to lay hold of the next life, I'd take all this material abundance. I'd simplify that, give it to the poor, and come and flow with me. And what does the man say? It says that the man was too fixated on his abundance to see where he was blind. And so he went away sorrowful. Why? Because in the King James, it says he had great possessions. Or what we know the real translation is, for great possessions had him. So focusing too much on our lack causes us to miss out on our daily abundance. Focusing too much of our abundance causes us to miss out on our spiritual lack, a wrong relationship with material, affecting how we are able to live in the now life and how we are able to relate to the next life. Not only that, in your notes, Jesus teaches how it's total void, that you can look and, without, you got no pot and no window, right? It's bad, right? Like one fellow said, so broke, I couldn't afford to get out of sight, let alone get out of town. Been there, done that. Still wearing the t-shirt, right? I understand what those things are. Those are reality. But Jesus taught how it's total void, the total void of materials, and it's robust abounding, that you can be in a season where you have total void of materials. It's hamburger helper, no hamburger. I've been there, baked potatoes for dinner. I've been there, leftover food someone else threw away for dinner. And in that total void, and I've also been there where everybody eats, one check, all to me. You sure? It's $70 a person. Man, get all you want. Who wants dessert? Who needs another thing? Let's get some to go. Let's get a couple more. I've been to that place. And sometimes Jesus taught how the total void of resources or the robust abounding of resources, they're both prime places for the practice of true religion. Oh, that when money is totally gone and totally stretched, that you can enter into spiritual practice, you can enter into connectivity with life, you can enter into a feeling of your feet on the ground, you can enter into true fellowship and unentanglement. Why? Because you realize that unless God sustains you day by day, that you will not be able to sustain tomorrow, and there's a tremendous prime opportunity to seat yourself in spiritual practice at that place. And guess what? That's when there's a total void and when there's a robust abundance of resources, oh my God, you can plot and plan. Who are we going to be? Tangible goodness. Whose prayers are we going to be the answer to? Here you are in prime spiritual practice. At once, when there's no money around, you can relate to it rightly. And when there's tons of money around, you can relate to it rightly. Why? Because when you have a spiritual focus, when you have a spiritual center, the presence or absence of money is not what you dance to. You dance to, God, how in this season do you want to reveal yourself to me and manifest yourself through me? That is what happens when we allow ourselves to be set aright in relationship to material things. Finally, in your notes here, as we move forward, how our relationship to material matters holds greater sway over our eternal existence than any other metric. Now that's scary, my God, that our relationship to material matters holds greater sway over an individual's eternal existence than any other metric. I'll say it again, how an individual relationship, your relationship, my relationship to material matters, how you relate to money, how you relate to material things, actually holds greater sway over your eternal existence than any other thing, than any other metric. That your relationship with money has a greater impact on heaven or hell. And again, I don't believe in heaven and hell in that traditional sense. The good place or the bad place, I don't believe in that traditional sense. But I'm telling you what, if you're obsessed about going to the right place when you die, if you're obsessed about, I want to make sure I go to the Holy Ghost Hotel, you better not put all your emphasis in, did I get the right blood sacrifice, the right animal sacrifice? Have I taken the right communion? Did I pray the right scriptures? Did I make the right profession? If you are serious about, I want to make make sure that when I die, hallelujah, by and by, that on the other side, I am greeted with open arms in that next place. There's no other place. They talk about the roulette. I'm going to put it all on red, all on black. There's no other place to put all of your spiritual energy coins than using your power moreness on behalf of those who are powerless. There's no other thing you can do for your eternal life that's more useful when it comes to true religion than just seeing others and wherever your power more, using your power moreness on their behalf. Your right relationship with material things is, according to Jesus' true teaching, is more central to your eternal existence than anything else. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're not going to go to heaven, that you're going to go to the hot place if you didn't give the guy a sandwich on the side of the road. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you want to be a spiritual person and you want to claim yourself as a follower of Christ, you can forget Romans 10, 9, and 10. You can forget getting on the right side. You can forget he's the blood that steps so God don't have to squash me, because if God sees me, he'll squash me. But with Jesus there, he won't squash me, which is, it doesn't even make sense. If Jesus is supposed to be God, then we're supposed to see God through him. And if Jesus ain't squashed, then God ain't going to squash. We haven't even let the person of Christ topple our false idea of God as presented with the Old Testament. But if you want to obsess over something, I just want to make sure I go to heaven. I just want to make sure I just want to make sure, stop dealing with sacrifices and covenants and blood and who's going to wash and who's going to cleanse and who's going to substitute. All of that is the tears that have been built in place of true religion. Jesus' true teaching is, if you're that obsessed where you're going to go when you die, just engage in the compassionate and pitiful and empathetic treatment of everybody you come in contact with. That's the greatest thing you could do for your eternal existence. I think I'm preaching way better than you're emojiing right now. And the church said, emoji, emoji, emoji. Okay, now let's get into this here. I'm going to give you three things today. We ended last week talking about wisdom and favor working together. It's number 20 in our list of elements of a supernatural life, elements of a spiritual life. Wisdom and favor can substitute for money. And when I say wisdom here, I want you to hear leading. In this context, I mean leading and favor. I have capital W wisdom. There is wisdom as in best practice. There is wisdom as in proven principles. There is wisdom as in a sound, course of action. And I certainly mean all of that. But there's a higher wisdom, which is a leading. What is that? It's a spirit leading. The leading of the Spirit combined with the goodness in the economy of human jurisdiction. When you are led and you are favored, when you really, what the leading is doing is, the leading is putting you in the flow of favor. The leading of the Spirit is posturing you in the stream where to catch that tailwind to move forward. Wisdom and favor, leading and favor, can substitute for money. They can create money, but they can also substitute for money. In the absence of money, wisdom and favor, being led into the flow of goodness, that can actually outperform money. 10 times, 10 times a trillion, take it to the depths of forever, multiply by eternity. You still don't have a clue, as the saying goes. Wisdom and favor can work hand in hand with your labor. Wisdom and favor can work, coming into your notes, hand in hand with your labor. You live by leading. You live by the flow of goodness and favor. The leading is what tells you position yourself. It's like catching a wave. You say, okay, I'm going to go. And you've never body surfed before, never surfed before. You never caught a flow or looked at a rapid and found where the flow is and where you can get the eddy. There's a flow to life. There's a rhythm to life. And leading of the Spirit, right, leads us into where that flow propels us forward. And you're catching a wave and there's a time and you're watching and there's a time and you got to get and if you're not paddling right in sync, it'll go past you. You get too far ahead, it'll go over you. But there is and it takes a minute to catch the rhythm. But when you catch that wave, when the leading and the paddling, when the leading of the Spirit and the laboring in the Spirit come together with the flow of favor and goodness, boy, that thing will take you all the way into shore. Wisdom and favor work hand in hand with labor. What I mean by labor, diligent labor, strategic labor, focused effort. I'm not just talking about just kicking up dust. I got to see that's not leading and favor and work. There is work, there is leading, there is favor, there's wisdom, favor, and work. These things work in concert. And I'm going to tell you what, you can amplify the work quadruple. It won't do for you what the wisdom and favor can do. As a matter of fact, you take the wisdom and favor out and all the work in the world won't go anywhere. You put the wisdom and favor back in, the leading and favor back in. One of the things my spiritual mom said that I love, she said, one day of the flow of favor can outdo 1,000 days of labor. When you put I'm just paddling is not going to get it done. I'm paddling, being led in my paddling, led to where the flow is, to amplify. You can walk or you can walk on a moving sidewalk. The flow is the moving sidewalk. The leading is to tell you where that alignment is. And now you're walking on that thing, but for every step you take, the ground underneath you is moving you 3 steps forward. That's wisdom and favor and leading, favor, and work all coming together. That's where you want to seat yourself in relationship to material things. That I am engaged in material things. I know I have to work. I know I have to have money. I know I have to have I have needs in order to survive that are practical in this world. But I don't seat my confidence in my labor. I seat my confidence in the flow of wisdom and favor. Now, let's move on to the next thing. Number 21. Understand the difference between seed and bread. Understand the difference between seed and bread. You can write this down for sake of reference. 2 Corinthians 9, very familiar scripture to you. 2 Corinthians 9 to some of you, maybe not so much. I don't want to take that for granted, but I'll just read it this way. When Paul, or the writer of this, was taking up a collection for people in need, he likened giving to sowing seed like a farmer. And when he was talking about this, he said, before we decide what to give in this offering that we're taking up for those in need, he says, just a friendly reminder, 2 Corinthians 9:6, that those who sow sparingly will reap sparingly. The farmer that puts a little bit of seed out will get a little bit of seed back. The farmer which sows bountifully shall reap also bountifully. How did he go to a farming metaphor? Because he speaks in the context of giving as seed, but you got to know the difference between seed and bread. And you can read all the promises that come out of the generous sowing. But verse 9, 2 Corinthians 6 says this, as it is written, he is dispersed abroad, he is given to the poor, his charity echoes forever. That's Psalm 112. But verse 10, now God gives seed to the sower. The same God that gives seed to the sower, seed to the farmer, or in this case, the spiritual farmer, gives seed to the sower. May that same God give you bread for food and multiply your seed sown and increase the reach and impact of your righteousness or your charity. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 10. What do I mean? Why do I read this? Because if we're going to walk in proper relationship to the material world, you must discern the difference between seed and bread. What do I mean the difference between seed and bread? That at all times the resource you have in your hand is a combination of seed and bread. Not everything you have is to be eaten. Not everything you have is to be sown, but by leading, wisdom, favor, work, by the leading of the Spirit, you can look at the resource you have and say, Lord, how much of what I have here is fit for my consumption and enjoyment, and how much of what I have here should be deposited as some form of spiritual farming, as some form of spiritual sowing materially, that it's going to create something in someone else's life, but it's also going to generate a harvest in my own life. In your notes, not all that passes through your hands is entirely yours. Not all the resources that pass through your hands are entirely yours. Not all of it is fit for personal consumption. I'll say it again. Not all that passes through your hands is entirely yours. Not all of it is fit for personal consumption. When things come into your hands, they come into your hands, and you have to say to God, because you're a person of the Spirit, God, I have something here. What part's mine and what part is really, not what part belongs to someone else. What part am I going to partner with you in because I'm on this adventure with God? Boy, about 35 years ago, well, this is 25, so probably 35, 34 years ago, I was in a real, my family was in a real difficult position, facing a really just dark time. And we were facing eviction. And just a lot of setbacks, a lot of things didn't work, and jobs, and it was a difficult economy back then. But we were just amplified, just everything that could come together came together. And I was watching my parents try to put things together, and hoping this thing would come, and get this sale, get this commission, and the commission didn't come, and we were hoping that this would have come in by now, and it was high time. The landlord was like, "Look, you got to have this tomorrow, or that's in trouble." And so I was watching my parents, and I was a young man, 17 years old. Back in 1990, I would have been, maybe 91, early 91. And I thought there was nothing I could do. I was making $5 an hour, $4.75 an hour, at McDonald's. And I was taking all the money that I would get. And by the time you get your taxes out and everything else, I was taking that and putting it into the household. Why? Because I was entering in the adult world. I was living there too, and I was contributing. But I was overhearing conversations and watching things go, and I thought, man, my parents aren't gonna, we need a miracle. And so I went to church, and I was just a young guy, and my pastor was there, and I thought, I hate to do this, but I wouldn't do it for myself, but on behalf of my parents who, 3 or 4 kids and blah blah blah. I just said, hey, can I talk to you for me? He says, yeah, I'll give you a ride and I'll take you home or whatever. So we were riding, and I started to tremble, and because I just didn't want to. I don't ever want to be a taker in that sense, And I said, I was a kid, I was younger than my son, and I said, hey, I hate to ask you this, but my family and this and that, and we're kind of this, and I was wondering maybe if there's any way maybe you could help out a little, I could pay you back or whatever. I don't know. And he got quiet in the car, and he said, thank you for that, Lord. I said, what? He said, how much do you need? And this is back. I said, it's $800 or whatever. And that was the rent plus the late fee or whatever. I said, $800. And he said, yeah, I got that. He said, man, God is so good. I said, what? He said, I got my check 2 weeks ago, and I paid this bill and paid that bill, and I had this money. And he said, the Lord said, set that aside and don't touch it. And this man opened his wallet, and there was a check set in the side, folded over for $800, not made out to anybody. Just sitting there, waiting for God to show what it was for. I said, oh, thank you so much. He said, no, Mike. He said, this is what I do with God. I just say, Lord, everything that I have, show me where you want it to be used. And he said, I've just been sitting waiting on who this is for. I didn't know where to give it. I didn't know what to do. He says, now it makes sense why God had me set this aside. What are you trying to say? That not everything that comes in our possession is entirely ours. It's not all destined and fit for our personal consumption. Listen, in your notes, a portion of it is surely marked by God as seed for sowing. A portion of it is surely marked by God as seed for sowing. Spiritual people, well, I just got my check, and it's $1,000, and the government took their part, and it's $720, and what do you got? Whew, $720. I'm going out, man. The Switch 2 is out, and this, day, and that. I'm going out, new shoes. I'm going to, to Belker, to this. And that's awesome. Thank God. Listen, you work hard for the money, so hard for the money, right? You work for it. Everybody's working for the weekend, man. There's nothing wrong with enjoying. There's nothing wrong, because surely what comes in is bread. This is here, and I've worked, and I've got bills, and I've consumed, and I've got set aside, and I'm going to go see the movie. This is what I used to do. I used to get, it got to where I was getting $400 a week, $200 a week. I would take the $20 tithe out of that money. I would take $20 just pocket money out for me, and I would take the entire $160 other dollars and put it into the household and say, here it is. And my parents were like, Mike, you don't have to do that. I said, no, I'm going to honor my spiritual temple sacrifice so that God will accept and cleanse me. He said, that's ridiculous. He said, man, help your folks. So I read this. He's Jesus trying to teach us how to relate to the material world. And so I did that, and I had my $20 tithe, and I would put that in every week, and I took the $20, just put it in my pocket. Now, this is back in early 90, 91, 92, so $20 would go a long way. And then I would put the other, I'd say, here's the $160, and we'd pay bills. And this was not a long season, but there was a couple of years where it was all hands on deck just to survive. And I remember sometime I would have my $20, and I'd be going to Friday night Bible study, and I'd put my tithe in. I'd get my check, and back when you cashed a check, I didn't have a bank account, so I'd go and cash it, wait in line on a Friday, and my eyes are getting weary, and back's getting tight, and I cash my check, and I come home and I'd have that little envelope and I'd pull out a 20 for the tithe and I'd pull out 20 for myself for the week, just pocket money. And I'd get that 160 and I'd leave it and say, Mom and Dad, here you go. And I'd go out and I'd go to Friday night Bible study and I would take my $20 and put it in the offering. And then, man, when Friday night Bible study is over, let's raise our hands for the benediction and we'll walk out the door for a $1 movie. Man, I'm going to a $1 movie. I'd go a $1 movie. Cokes weren't $36. They didn't wear masked Sarabi at the concession stand back then. I mean, it's probably $4, which is ridiculous. But man, $20, I get a $1 theater, a $3 or $4 Coke and a popcorn combo. And it was high times. It was so enjoyable. I went to so many movies. That was my Saturday. I just absolutely loved that time in my life. And then I would be at a Friday night Bible study, have that 20, getting ready for the benediction. They'd say, actually, before we go, church, there's a family up here who has need. We want to give you a chance to sow into their lives. And man, somebody come up and say, we're about to be put out of our house and this and that. And I used to get so mad because I didn't want God to speak to me about my $20. I had that $20. I was going to go see that movie and I didn't want to be talked to about it at all because I just didn't want to be talked to about that. And I realized that was my early days of partnering with God and saying, God, everything I have. I used to hear a guy say one time, how would you like to give one time and never have to give again? So, oh man, I'd like to give one time and never have to give again. Stop all these installments. He said, I tell you what, give it all. Just say, God, everything I have, everything that's in my possession, everything I will ever come into my possession, I offer it freely to you. You just speak to me and lead and guide me on what belongs to me and what belongs to other people. I give everything I have had, everything I will have into your hand. Lead and guide me in this supernatural adventure. And that is the attitude of those in the Spirit. That is the attitude of life in the Spirit. A portion of what we have is surely marked as seed. When I say seed here, I want you to think intentional deposit, that there's something in my possession that should be intentionally deposited into some higher thing. It's not only intentional deposit, it's dual spiritual investment. And we got to move quickly here because of the tech issues. Intentional deposit, dual spiritual investment. Spiritual investment, what? In the other. Spiritual investment in the self. I'm not only investing in others with my seed, I'm investing in my own self. If you're going to walk this life of knowing the difference between seed and bread, in your notes very quickly, it requires a mindfulness. If you're going to be a sower, if you're going to be a spiritual person that relies on leading and wisdom and work to come together and to create a flow of right relationship with materials, if you're going to know the difference between the seed, that what you have, what part of it's bread to eat and what part of it's seed to sow, it requires mindfulness. It requires sensitivity of observation. You have to be a mind of a sower. You have to walk in and say, Lord, is there something, is there a way you want me to be involved in this? Is there a deposit, a dual spiritual investment, an intentional deposit that should be made? This is what it means. You have to be mindful to walk this life. You have to have sensitivity of observation to walk this life. You have to have what I call spirit-directed attention, that you allow the Spirit to direct your attention here or direct your attention here. You can be on your way to the store, but the Spirit brings something to your attention and then reminds you, this is why not everything you have is bread. Some of it is seed. Intentional deposit, dual spiritual investment, investing in others. But when you sow, when you live life as a sower, and you can read all that, 2 Corinthians 9, it's beautiful how they talked about the abundance that they were creating in others' lives was creating thanksgiving to God. And it was actually returning back on those people that gave. It's a beautiful picture of this flow, this dance of generosity, this dance of reciprocal outpouring and infilling, right? So mindfulness, sensitivity of observation, spirit-directed attention. What it does is it sensitizes you to need, that you walk into a place and you become sensitized to need, not moved or motivated by need, but you're moved and motivated by the Spirit, but you're sensitized to need. Sensitized to need. And I have in my notes a parenthesis, visible need and even unexpressed need. Sometimes there's visible need that you're sensitized to, and you're talking to somebody and they say, well, have a good day. And you just walk and you see those shoes and you feel like, I think the Lord just directed me to those shoes running over. How are they going to do their new job and go in that interview with those shoes? You say, hey, brother, hey, listen, let me tell you, listen, can I just bless you? Man, I used to have shoes that I had to put paper towels in just to keep the water out. Would it be okay if I just blessed you with some shoes? What are you doing? I just like to sow that in your life. Man, are you serious? I was just praying to God. God, I'm so embarrassed about these shoes. I've looked so broke. But what? Let's get you some shoes. I mean, or here, let me write you a thing. Or it's and just you're sensitized to need. Sometimes that need is visible. Sometimes that need is unexpressed. You could look at a person and say, well, you seem like you're looking good. You seem like you're driving good. Seem like you're dressing good. But the Holy Ghost will say, there's something going on here. Well, I didn't see anything. They seem fine to me. But the Spirit will say to you, I want you to sow into this. Well, but sow into that, God, they look just fine. You never know what people are going through. You never know what's going on under the surface of their life, which is why you need that Spirit directed attention. Why? Because you're sensitized to need, not only the visible need, but sometimes there's an unexpressed need. And then when you find out, well, actually we were faithful, why didn't you say anything to me about it? Well, I was just trusting that God was going to make. I'm relying on the wisdom in the flow, just like everybody else is. And I figured it would work its way out. And I receive what you're doing. Thank you for it. I take it as an expression of your sensitivity and your spirituality and your spiritual kindness and your generosity. I receive it as that. But more than that, I receive it as wisdom and the flow leading me into goodness. So it's a dual working that's taking place. Sensitivity, sensitized to need. Here's another one, sensitized to season. When you're a sower, when you live life as a spiritual person, you're allowing the teachings of Jesus to set your relationship to material things aright. When you're allowing that to happen, you get sensitized to season, and you see where people are in their seasons. You see where people are in startup season. You see where they're in transition season. You see where they are in rebuild season. You see when they are just about to crest the wave into breakthrough season. And a sower is always listening to the Spirit regarding seasons. And you'll hear someone say, well, we're getting ready to start out on this, or we just finished that, and the Spirit will just prompt you. Oh, this is a good place to make an investment. What do you know? I just want to bless you. Or you'll hear about somebody that some work of the kingdom, something that's going to bring spiritual good. It's going to ease suffering. It's going to bring justice. You'll hear about some act, some vision, some encouragement, some work, and the Lord will just sensitize you. Say, I want you to give into that. That's the life of this type of sower. Sensitized to need, to season, to investment. Sensitized to investment. There's the future of a person, the future of a vision. This is part of the Spirit life. This is part of the Spirit adventure. In reality, what I'm talking to you about now, I can't just teach you for 44 hours and put all this in. So I'm saying, well, you're talking about that 2 weeks ago. You talked about 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to bring it all into focus for you. Spirit life, Spirit adventure. This is part of partnering with God. The more developed you become in this type of stewardship, the more you enter into a vessel and distribution partnership with God. What do I mean by vessel and distribution? I'm just a vessel. People say, I'm just a vessel. What is that? That I flow in wisdom and favor. I flow in wisdom and favor and work. That wisdom and favor and work has created material abundance in this season of my life. And now I'm sitting here, not just walking as a bread consumer, but as a seed depositor. And I'm actually walking as a partner with God. I gave it to you just recently. My spiritual dad said, stop asking God, what is your purpose for my life? And start asking God, Father, how do you want to manifest yourself through me today? This is partnering with God. You can write this down as we come to a close. Proverbs 11, 24 through 26. Proverbs 11, 24 through 26. It simply states, the world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. One dimension of being sensitized to what is seed and what is bread is this dimension of generosity. That when you get sensitized, and here's the thing about it, I know people with not a lot of money that are very sensitized to the seed and bread reality. They're very sensitized to that principle. There are people with a whole bunch of resources that are not cognizant at all of sowing, and there are people of just modest resources that are very keen on their relationship with material things and go through life living in this dimension of generosity. One dimension of this seed life is generosity, and it's generosity to those in need and to the vulnerable. Generous towards those in need and the vulnerable. I'll tell you, you'll never go wrong being generous to anything that has to do with children. Children up close, children far away, children you know, children you don't know. You'll never go wrong targeting your generosity towards those who are in need or the vulnerable. Those are children. You'll never go wrong channeling your generosity to people who are in the service, who work in service industries. Gratuity and tipping and appreciation and the extra mile. Those are all good places to start and to stay. But it's not just, well, I'm just going to be generous to people and I'm going to give big tips. That's awesome. But it's not only out of your will. Generosity, listen to me. Generosity is the seed dimension of your own will. See, when I'm a generous person, that's my own will expressing my generosity. And we will have that. And most of the time you go through life just being generous until you hear the Lord say, I don't want you to participate in this. And you feel a caution in your spirit. But that's that self-willed generosity, that I'm just a person of a large soul that likes to give. That's a beautiful dimension of being a sower, but it exists in concert with the Spirit of God leading you, because there might be some places you don't even see or notice, or some places you don't even see the need or the vulnerability, but the Lord directs you to give in that place. This is the partnering and the walking with God. Final point of the day. Final point of the day. You must develop a keen awareness of your own financial weight. Your own financial heaviness. In your notes, you must develop a keen awareness. Central to this, a keen awareness of your own financial weight. I have heavy and heaviness. That's a common theme in Scripture when it talks about the weight of glory, or they were rich. The original language says they were weighty or mighty. You have to be a keen awareness of your own financial weight. This is something that I just want to get to you. I know we've had tech things. I know we've had internet or whatever. I don't let this be taken from you today. The larger your material mass, but the larger your the larger the mass of your material resource weight, the larger your footprint, the larger your material resource footprint. Listen to me. The greater your share of the load must be. The larger your material footprint, the larger the mass of who you are in the material financial realm, the larger financial and material mass that you have, the greater share of the load that you must shoulder. The more weight you carry in this arena, the greater the obligation of you to shoulder the load in this arena. And I know people getting offended. Well, I don't understand. If I got money, why should I always be? It ain't fair. My family always expects me to pay for this and that and this. That. Well, I mean, this is a self-evident thing. I mean, if you go to work for 35 hours a month and you're bringing in $86,000 a month, and your brother-in-law and your sister-in-law out there sweating 65 hours a week, and they're not even making $86,000 in a year, you think that when you get the vacation house, you all split equally? Well, I got big bills. Listen, I'm not saying we can't pre-commit our seed and say, I can't help you here because I've already promised my seed to my bills. I've created a monster that needs to be fed every week, and so I'm not sensitive to my seed. I'm actually taking my seed and eating it as delayed promises of bread. I'm not saying that we can't fall in that trap, but you must understand that when God has brought you to a place by wisdom and favor and labor, and it has created a place or a season of outsized financial weight, that if that's your biggest weight, that you tip the scales at a greater element, then guess what else? You must shoulder the collective load in a greater way. I was out with a gentleman the other day. His first time going out, when he said, I'd like to talk to you. I just could use a friend. And I said, well, let's talk. And we went out, and man, I mean, broker than broke, man. But I said, well, I'm going to scrape together, and it was $35 or whatever. And I called Connie. I said, it's going to be $35. Can I pay for it? And she was like, let me see. Let me check a card. Let me say, okay, there might be on this thing. And we got down, and the bill came, and I said, well, I got this. And he said, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. And he said, no, I didn't call you here for you to buy our meal. I want to do it. I said, no, it's okay. It's okay. I just saw a guy going in transition, and I felt like this is something I could do, even though I didn't have that outsized financial position. Certainly not in that conversation at that table. I was not the outsized financial position. But I remember I told him, and he said, well, I don't want you to have to do that. And I told him this straight up. I said, oh, it's okay. I said, Connie and I won the lotto a few years ago, and all we have is extra money sitting around, so this is the least we could do with it. And, he sat back in his chair and said, oh, okay. Oh, thank you. And it was kind of like, oh, well, if you got all that money, then I have no problem with you carrying the sort of that part of the load. And I think that's how we should go through life. I'm a multi-time lottery winner. Man, I won the day I came into personal relationship with Christ. I lost a lot of years in false religion, but man, my life changed. I won with my parents and the family I was born in. I won with the woman I met and fell in love with. I won with my kids being born. I won with my family and my friends, the people that I'm sharing this journey with. I mean, I feel like I'm a sweepstakes winner 10 times over. And with that revelation of just how fortunate I am, despite all of the trials, I still have a revelation of how fortunate I am. I seat myself in that. And so the generosity that flows, I carry myself. Man, God has been, what did I say? Baseball been Betty good to me. God been Betty good to me. And I seat myself and live out of that reality and that perspective. So I still don't understand why when I talk to guys who play football or professional sports. Somebody say, "Well, I'm going on vacation with so and so. They just got a $200 million contract. This guy's a rookie. He got $300,000. By the time his agent, and the tax man, and everything else, he's got about $180,000. And man, if he blows out a knee, that's all he has. And he'll go out with somebody $200,000, and they'll go to dinner, $200 million contract. And when you go to dinner and the bill is $375, it's not right for you to look to the guy that just got a thing and expect them to carry the same load. It's just not right. Now, there may be things where you can sow into wisdom. You can sow into, no, I'm here and I'm gleaning something from this, and I thank you for what you're imparting me and teaching me, and the least I could do is deposit into this. There is that element, but my God, you must first start with the more abundantly weighty I am in the financial arena, the greater the demand for me to carry the load of that in my home, in my family, in my community, in my friends. There is that great. Someone said, well, I just don't see it that way. There is no other way to see it unless our turtle has not yet been set aright in connecting and correcting our relationship to material things. I'm going to stop there. Again, I'm grieved because of the imperfection of the technology. Somebody, we ought to meet live. Well, you meet live. I've been in live meetings when the whole PA, the whole power, the whole lights went out. It happens. But I'm grieved because I wanted to get this spiritual gold from my heart to your heart. So I hope you're able to catch some of it. We'll close here. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for your support. That if you are receiving spiritual good out of this, I thank you for the material support. It means so much to us. If you're like, I'm hearing this and it's stretching me, it's growing me, I feel like God is working through you to turn me into this other, more spiritual person. And it's certainly not me, but if you feel that, then we would appreciate your support. It would mean so much to us. And that as we've blessed you, you'll be a blessing. I think that is a fitting way to complete that cycle. And so I thank you for that. And even beyond this whole teaching is about you going out and living as embodied charity, that you're not just going to say, well, I gain a lot from this preacher and I support him and his family. I support the message and the messenger by being a blessing to this man and his family because they're teaching you so much about recovering out of false religion and what it truly means to know and to walk with God. And oh my God, I'm so blessed and they bless me so much. I want to bless them. Thank God for that. Thank you. I thank you for that. I give God praise for that and your partnership with God in the answering of our prayers. But it doesn't stop there. Hundreds of people watch this every week and they don't even start there. But if you say, yeah, I'm not going to just partake of all the things you're giving me to change my life and then never say, hey, wow, I want to create value. But I also don't want you to come here week in and week out and say, yeah, I go to church online. It's pretty good. It's not church until you go out and live this across the kitchen table and across the world. That's what true religion is. That's what Jesus was trying to teach. There's nothing more central to you, who you are as a spiritual person, than how you're relating to the material world and how you're finding a way in any area, money or not, to use your power moreness on behalf of the powerlessness in this world. That is what it means to be church, and that's why we don't have a steeple or doors or carpet or anything else. We got to this, we got to get this repaired, we need snacks for this. If people need snacks, go give them. People need comfort, go give them. People need help with kids, go do it. People have food needs, go do it. I should be giving to our building fund for the church. You want to help people? There's all sorts of places you can give to help. You can go get some old lady's front porch fixed. You can go get somebody's car repaired. There's all sorts of church to do in the wild, right? That's what I want. That's what I believe was I believe that was the wheat. And how it got turned into the tares, I do not know. We're trying to recover what it means to live like that, to be the ongoing body of Christ. It doesn't mean, well, I'm the body of Christ, which means I'm on the right team and all the Muslims and the Jews and the gays and everybody, they're on the wrong team and they're all going to go to hell. That is ridiculous. That is so contrary to anything that we know to be true about the person of Christ. Might be consistent with his third cousin Raul, has nothing to do with the person of Christ. But if you know Christ, you know, wait a minute, all this spiritual energy. And thank God for churches, man. I thank God for churches. But if your church is entirely rooted in snatching souls out of hell, it is not yet fully connected to Christ. But once you realize it is supposed to be rooted in empowering people to embody Christ's charity, to be the ongoing embodiment of Christ in the earth, now all of a sudden that institution is doing what it was intended to do. But I digress. Thank you for your love. But more importantly, thank you for being love out in the world. I speak peace, health, grace, protection, soundness, abundance, aboveness on you and yours. God, I thank you that despite all of these hiccups and this imperfect technology, that something of future use, that an echo of this deposit will go into the future, that we will be changed and transformed, but not just for how it's blessing us, but that others will be partakers of this spiritual work that you're doing in our life. That's the goal, that others can partake of the fruit that's coming out of our relationship with you. Your blessing and peace be upon each one. I thank you for them, Lord. I thank you for you. I thank God for you. Make it great. We'll try to get this fixed in post. But Connie and I love you so much. My whole family loves you. And we'll see you next week. Don't forget this Wednesday, 12:30, our Final Grace Conversations episode of Season 1. It's going to be a blessing. I love you much. Bye.